Greetings from India. I am Shivraj Mahendra and delighted to present my humble paper at the 15th Assembly of International Association of Mission Studies at Sydney, Australia. Thank you for joining with me on this presentation. Here is the slide on your screen. The title of my paper is Vulnerability to Victory, Snapshots from the Life, the Mission, and the Legacy of Ernest F. Ward, the pioneering Free Methodist missionary to India. Ever since my conversion to Christ, I have been fascinated with missionary biographies. In the past couple of years, I have particularly been interested in exploring the lives of lesser known missionaries and native Christian leaders. This paper explores the life, the mission, and legacy of the pioneering Free Methodist missionary Ernest F. Ward. Does this name sound familiar? I guess not. The Reverend Ernest Ward and his wife Phoebe Ward worked in central India during 1881 to 1927. The Wards were instrumental in the following significant ventures. First, the conversion of Narayan Vaman Tilak, who went on to become a famous Marathi Christian poet. Second, the founding of the original vernacular Bible school that paved the way for present day Union Biblical Seminary. Third, the starting of village clinics that lay at the root of the Umri Christian Hospital. Fourth, running of orphanages, famine kitchens, and Sunday schools that continue to inspire humanitarian ministries of the denomination in India. And fifth, officially establishing of the India Holiness Association in 1910. Ernest Ward carried out what may be called a holistic mission. They lived in poverty, lacked formal seminary qualifications, and suffered health conditions. In spite of all these vulnerabilities, the Wards were able to gain extraordinary victory in the mission field. However, the Wards remain almost unknown in the history of Christianity and missions. This paper narrates their story for our generation for the first time. This is based on my PhD dissertation, which is published as Lived Missiology, the Legacy of Ernest and Phoebe Ward. Ernest Fremont Ward was born on April 25, 1853, in Elgin and grew up in Geneva. Both these places are in Kane County, Illinois, USA. Ernest was the second child of Pinder and Emily Ward. Ernest is described as a bookworm, always fascinated with books on various subjects. He loved singing, was a commerce graduate, and a courthouse employee who went on to be a missionary. Ernest was converted to Christ in 1871 during the ministry of Reverend R.S. Canteen, a Methodist Episcopal Church minister. Ernest wrote, and I quote, "On the 14th of November, 1871, God sent a dispatch from heaven to assure me that my sins were blotted out in the blood of his Son, and my soul was filled with joy unspeakable." Unquote. From 1873, Ernest began to search for a more perfect way. At that time, it was known as Christian perfection or Christian holiness, which was not taught in his church. In 1876, he attended a Free Methodist camp meeting at St. Charles, Illinois, and his search came to an end. He found the teaching and practice of holiness among the Free Methodists and surrendered his life to receive it. Consequently, in 1879, he joined the Free Methodist Church. Among the Free Methodists, Ernest not only found his soul's desire, but also his soulmate, Phoebe. Phoebe Elizabeth Cox was born on October 7, 1850, in Ontario County, New York, and grew up in Cary, McHenry County, Illinois. She was a ranch girl and she loved dancing. She went on to become a school teacher and later a Sunday school teacher and missionary. Phoebe was converted to Christ in 1873 and remained an active member of the FMC, which is the Free Methodist Church. Ernest and Phoebe met in 1878 at St. Charles Camp meeting. They were united in holy matrimony on October 4, 1880. This was the same year they had responded to their call to mission in India. The inspiration to go to India as missionaries had come through Ernest's friend Albert Norton, who was already a missionary in central India and had called for more missionaries uh, in that place. Ernest was ordained during the 21st annual session of the Illinois Conference of the Free Methodist Church. This was organized from October 6 to 11, 1880. Ernest and Phoebe left for India on November 15, 1880. Describing his missional vision, Ernest wrote, I have one ambition paramount to all others, to so accurately exhibit Jesus Christ in my life and conversations as to stimulate seekers, promote revivals, and hasten the millennium. Ernest and Phoebe had three daughters, Ethel, Bessie, and Louisa. Ethel went on to become a lifetime missionary in India on her own rights. Ernest also had Ernest and Phoebe also had adopted children, among whom Thomas Ward was the father of India's first FMC bishop, Daniel Ward. Phoebe died in the USA during their furlough of 1910. Ernest continued to work in India, retired in 1927, and entered his heavenly rest in 1937. He was called the Francis Asbury of the Free Methodist Mission in India. The Wards were engaged in holistic missions in central India and preached Christian holiness. On a personal note, I would say that exactly 100 years before I came to Christ, Ernest Ward walked through my village and had chicken curry with the king, Maharaja Narhardev of Kankir, which is close to my village. He had also witnessed to fishermen in the region, and I was supposed to be a fisherman as I was born in that family, but by God's grace, I'm a fisher of people now. I believe that Ernest and Phoebe's prayers and the prayers of other Christians after him were instrumental in the salvation of many people of Bastar, Chhattisgarh, including mine. It is a great joy to identify with him in faith and in mission. The mission of Ernest and Phoebe Ward. Arriving in India in January of 1881, the Wards founded the following missions. 1. Burhanpur Faith Mission, 1881. Located in the southern Madhya Pradesh, Burhanpur was a strategic place. Shah Jahan's wife Mumtaz was first buried here, and Ernest and Phoebe's oldest daughter Ethel was born here. Ward's first Indian colleague, Vinayak Trimbak, was converted here. The official Free Methodist missionaries, Mary Louise Ranf and Julia Zimmerman, joined the Wards in 1886 in Burhanpur. The second mission was Pilgrim Faith Mission, Elishpur, 1887. At that time, it was known as Elishpur, now it is known as Achalpur, is located in northern Maharashtra. It was a tribal area. The Wards briefly lived here with a missionary family when they had first come to India. They had returned to this place to carry out the Korku mission. The Korku is a tribal in that part. The Ernest Ward published a brief sketch of the Korkus in 1891. Their second daughter was born here at Elishpur. Third is the Chhattisgarh Pilgrim Mission, founded in 1895. Chhattisgarh, then eastern part of the central provinces, was one of the most challenging mission fields of the Wards. They served here during one of the most difficult times in Indian history. Here they built orphanages, served the famine sufferers, and took care of many lives. They made friends with local Rajas such as Maharaja Baliram Das of Rajnandgaon and Maharaja Narhardev of Kankir, which I already mentioned, with whom Ernest had chicken curry near my place, and also faced internal disputes with colleagues. So Chhattisgarh Pilgrim Mission was a very special episode in their ministry life. Here they had some of their most important converts, such as Narayan Vaman Tilak, the famous Marathi Christian poet. Um, there is not a church in Maharashtra today that worships the Lord without singing Narayan Vaman Tilak's song. And any research that has come before him has not found the source that it was Ernest Ward who had brought the gospel to Narayan Vaman Tilak on a train. Most of the other previous researchers, they just say an unknown missionary or the evangelist whose name is not known. But I found out in my research that it was Ernest Ward, and this information is confirmed by Narayan Vaman Tilak himself during his lifetime. The fourth mission was orphan mission in two places. One is in Daund, which is in Maharashtra, and the other is in Sanjan, which is in Gujarat. The ward's orphan work extended to 5 cities and 3 states. Initially, it started in Chhattisgarh, where Rajnandgaon, Khairagad, and Dondi Lohara were the centers. In Maharashtra, it was Daund near Pune, and in Gujarat, it was Sanjan. Some of their orphans from Rajnandgaon were part of the great revival that took place at Pandita Ramabai's Mukti mission in 1905. Fifth mission, the Free Methodist Church mission of Vidarbha or Maharashtra. Although the wards were Free Methodist, they had worked as independent missionaries for more than 2 decades, first 2 decades of their ministry. Only from 1904, they became official Free Methodist missionaries supported by the FMC Board of Missions. In their various mission stations, the ward carried out the following activities. 1. Evangelism and church planting. Preaching the good news of Jesus Christ was the supreme commitment of the wards. They would build a mission bungalow and then reach out to the neighbors. Evangelism included ministry among children, bazaar preaching, village outreaches, singing, tract distribution, etc. They went where they needed the most. They went where they were needed the most. They reached hundreds of villages on foot or bullock carts. The second activity was humanitarian services. Evangelism and social work went hand in hand in the ministry of the wards. From the very beginning of their ministry, they were adopting orphan children. And during the famine of 1900s, they were largely engaged in caring for the hungry, the dying, and the orphans. In addition to orphanages, the wards conducted vocational school for boys, started Marathi medium Bible school to train local evangelists, and carried mobile clinics to the villages. Third activity was interreligious encounters. Ernest and Phoebe worked among the Muslims, the Hindus, and the tribal people of central India. With each of these people, they were engaged in dialogues, interreligious dialogues. They employed them to work together in the mission compounds and created an inclusive community. They had a Muslim cook by the name Jewarbi in Rajnandgaon, and she became one of the prominent converts, a Hindu preaching assistant Trumbak at Burhanpur station, and a tribal language assistant Loka. And all these combined and beautified their ministry to the people of other faiths. Fourth, Christian holiness. The ward's central message was Christian holiness. Ernest was the founding president of the India Holiness Association, which was inaugurated in 1910. This was an interdenominational annual conference. Ernest believed that there, and I quote, that there can be no permanent happiness without holiness. Holiness and happiness are eternally wedded together. Ernest Ward believed, and I quote, there can be no permanent happiness without holiness, because holiness and happiness are eternally wedded together, unquote. The fifth activity that the wards could be associated with and identified with is the publications. Although they were not prolific writers and they didn't have much time to do so, the wards published 2 important books and several small articles for mission bulletins. In addition to the sketches of the Korku, which was published a small booklet in 1891, Ernest produced a Korku grammar and vocabulary and translated select Bible portions like the Ten Commandments in the Korku language. His grammar was later improved by John Drake and published by the Baptist Mission, Kolkata in 1903. The second notable publication was Echoes from Bharatkhand, a summary of their works in India up to 1908. In the articles, Ernest addressed the issue of idolatry, caste system, holiness, salvation, conversion, and various other subjects. We shall now move to the vulnerabilities or challenges that the wards faced and how they responded to them. The following challenges or vulnerabilities may be highlighted from the life and ministry of Ernest and Phoebe Ward: financial, medical, organizational, contextual, and spiritual. It is encouraging to see how they responded to these challenges and came out quite victorious. First, financial challenge. The wards labored as faith missionaries for the first 25 years of their ministry. They came to India when the FMC had not formed a foreign mission board until 1885. Thus, they received no guaranteed regular support or salary. They depended on God for their daily provisions. They received occasional support from family and friends, including locals. They were thrifty and lived in poverty. Phoebe once wrote, and I quote, "God has never failed me." Occasionally, they partnered with other organizations such as the Pentecost bands. Medical challenges. Both Ernest and Phoebe suffered from several heat strokes, fatigues, and burnouts, and fever, and so on. Phoebe was highly dependent on prayer for healing. She did not generally opt for medication. However, at one point, 1902, about 8 years before her demise, she thought of relocating to the USA for health reasons. Ernest was moderate. He, in fact, carried medicines on village outreaches. Third, organizational challenge. Ward's organizational challenges were characterized by separation as well as reconciliation. The partnership with the Pentecost bands, which was formed during the Chhattisgarh mission, did not last long. Serious disagreements, leadership issues, and some painful memories necessitated a permanent separation. The work with the Vanguard mission in Gujarat was also short lived. The opportunity to reconcile with the FMC Board of Mission was taken as a timely blessing. The board did not hesitate to apologize to any misunderstanding caused by their association with the bands. Fourth, contextual challenges, contextualization or indigenization issue. Unlike some other missionaries who promoted English and Western lifestyle among the Christians, the wards had adopted local dress code and languages. Ernest worked with Hindi, Hindustani, Marathi, Urdu, Gujarati, and Chhattisgarhi languages. Both Ernest and Phoebe identified with the poor and the needy, and at the same time fellowshiped with the rulers and officers. They mastered the basics of Hinduism, tribal religion, and Islam to witness Christ to the people belonging to those faith traditions. Another vulnerability was that their wards did not have any formal seminary education. However, they were self taught and remained lifelong learners interacting with contextual challenges. Fifth, spiritual challenge. Spiritual battle was fought with fasting and prayers. Ernest did not hesitate to expose the practice of idolatry among Hindus. He presented Christianity as the true religion, preached Christian holiness as the supreme virtue, organized holiness and revival meetings to combat spiritual darkness in the mission field. Let me conclude by highlighting the legacy of the wards. A study of the life and mission of the wards within the framework of biography as missiology brings out their missional legacy, which may be called lived missiology. The ingredients of a lived missiology may be summed up as follows. 1. Activistic missiology. Not much time was spent in doing missiology at the sunset, which refers to reflecting and writing. but almost entire time was spent in doing missiology at sunrise, which refers to the active mission engagements through outreaches. So the wards were exceedingly activistic with little or no time to write books and reflect on their strategies. Second, holistic missiology. As stated earlier, evangelism and social work went hand in hand. They took care of orphans and widows, educated boys and girls, trained native evangelists, and provided medicine for the sick. Third, Orientalist missiology. With their somewhat anti-Western approach, promotion of local language and culture, and labor toward a truly indigenous, free self kind of church, what signified an Orientalist mission mandate. Fourth, dialogical missiology. The interreligious encounters of the wards with Hindus, Muslims, and tribal people, if recorded in detail, would have presented a candid introduction to a dialogical missiology. They would have been somewhat comparable to the works of missionary statesmen such as E. Stanley Jones. However, they did not have much time to do that. But their encounters were powerful and brought some prominent converts such as Tilak. Holiness missiology is the fifth element of lived missiology in relation to Ernest and Phoebe Ward. Ward's central message was Christian holiness. This provides a unique and rare framework to his theology of mission. The founding of the India Holiness Association in 1910 must be seen as a significant emphasis on holiness in relation to mission. To conclude, Ernest and Phoebe Ward were an ordinary and vulnerable but courageous couple in the hands of an extraordinary God. They had a special sense of calling and burden for mission work in India. Ernest was convinced, and I quote, he was convinced that all Christians are not called to preach or to be foreign missionaries, but they are to be light in the world wherever they are, unquote. Ernest and Phoebe served in central India as pioneers and pathfinders. It was and continues to be a challenging mission field. They faced hardships, persecution, they needed much grace, and they were granted much grace. Phoebe testified, and I quote, it takes grace and perseverance in these days of compromise to be a Christian. We are having a hard fight, but with God's help, we are sure to conquer. End of quote. Ernest and Phoebe did leave a great and victorious legacy behind. Their life and work inspires us to remain actively engaged in mission, even with limited resources and abilities. So, my presentation is a call to celebrate the life and legacy of Ernest and Phoebe Ward. They remain unacknowledged, undiscussed, and uncelebrated missionary, and my book for the first time discussed their story. Thank you for your patience and time. I welcome questions and comments. You could email them to me, and my contact will be available through the association. Thank you so much. God bless.